What's up, world? We are back with another episode of the All Things House podcast. Tonight, we got a very special guest hailing from Seattle, DJ, producer, label owner, Longstocking. What's up? How you doing?
Hey, everybody. I'm good. Good to be here.
We are glad to have you, for sure. So, like we were saying off air, I like to get our guests' background stories. Can you start from when you decided? Let's start with the music. When did you first kind of discover music?
Since my earliest memories, my mom playing records, just playing records. Had a record collection and. I was on a record stand. So I was probably, maybe 4 or 5. And so I put records on and could barely see over and was trying to set them so I could play music. And I kept scratching up her records and she'd get really angry. So she bought me a little Fisher-Price, the little mobile Fisher-Price suitcase record player for kids, which worked. And so, I was like 5. Had one of those. It was battery operated, so I could take it around. And there was like a store down the street that sold like 7 inches, little 7-inch records, for like a nickel each. And so I would buy them, and they didn't, have covers and stuff, so they were like cheaper, like just reselling stuff from yard sales probably. So I would take these little records around and play them at different playgrounds. So I was this little 6-year-old kid DJing before I knew what DJing was.
Mobile DJing,
with my little 7 inches and my little Fisher-Price record player. And kids loved it because it was like, we get to listen to jams and play on the playground, And so that's, I think, my earliest memories is I've always been, obsessed with music. And then as I got older, I got into breakdancing and got into breaks themselves and like old school hip hop and, just electronic music, like Kraftwerk, Bavada back in the day. And then, and just techno and all of that stuff that came up to the 80s.
Yeah.
And because I'm a child of the 80s.
Likewise.
Right on. And so when the 90s came around, being queer and I was coming up in kind of a punk world as a punk kid, which kind of went hand in hand a lot with skaters and surfers. But it was like discovering, because I love dance, and then I discovered drum and bass and house around the same time in the mid-90s. And then, which was an amazing time for house. And went to raves and was one of those little club kids that, felt that community acceptance for the first time, being in an environment where half the club was queer, if not more, and people could dress up and they put on a huge show, where it wasn't just the DJs that were the stars, the dancers were the stars, and you had all these characters. And so, I've always just kind of kept my ear on what's going on in dance music, preferably the underground.
Yeah.
I think coming up in the punk scene, I kind of tuned out top 40 and have since the 90s. And I've done a pretty good job of doing it, which kind of helps my music, because by the time something, curdles all the way up to the top, it's pretty diluted, I feel like, most often.
Very true.
Yeah, and the underground is what they're juicing,
Yeah.
So I've just sort of kept my eyes on an ear on the underground, and then listened to, House's resurgence with Bloghouse, and in the 2000s, in the 90s, I was in a punk band. I played drums and did vocals, and for a short time, didn't take it, too serious because I was a kid,
Yeah. What point did you, so once you got into that, like that rave and club scene, what point did you decide the DJ was the thing that you wanted to do? Or was there like a long process in between there?
There was a long process.
Yeah.
I actually was making breaks with a friend in my 20s, started playing around with that. And then started playing around with an 808, and then that caught my ear. So it was like I love the rave, I love the underground culture. And then, meeting people and just kind of like learning things here and there, picking up things. And then I didn't start DJing until a few years ago.
Okay.
I don't know how many years ago now. Shoot, I don't know. Like maybe 4 years ago. I don't know.
Okay.
But yeah, when it comes to making music, that's something I've done off and on. And then DJing, I kind of was, getting back into dance music again, and then was a bit shocked to see what had sort of happened to house.
oh, you took a little break?
Yeah.
Okay.
I did take a break. There was this period, when Bloghouse came up, and then that was like,
the thing.
France was taking off, and like Headbanger, all that. And then, that fizzled out, as things do. And then, I myself was trying to play a role, of a successful man, a husband, father, all of that. And, eventually that just weighed me down to the point where my mental health deteriorated, and I had to transition. And then after doing that, I had to find things that made me want to live, made me want to wake up tomorrow. And I missed music, and I loved going dancing. And I would go out sometimes here and there in those dark, gray days. But DJing kind of pulled me out of me. And then I was a bit dismayed with what happened with house, because I know what it did for me, and what it meant for me to be around such a diverse crowd of people that was, not just from multiple ethnic backgrounds, but also genderqueer presentation, and just like gender bending left and right. Because the 90s, it was just blowing up. Yeah. It was becoming mainstream-ish. And so, seeing how far away things had moved from that, definitely inspired me to sort of throw my hat in, and I don't know, maybe kind of steer it for the better, make it as inclusive as it was for the people who created it. Yeah. Maybe the marginalized don't have to be a guest in this house that they built. So I think that's what really inspired me to start making music again soon after DJing, because
So why do you think that steered away from your beginnings in the scene? Like, what changed, do you think?
The juice scene.
Yeah.
Culture vultures, juice scene, like, with everything.
Juicing, well, I'm not familiar with that term. What's that mean?
Taking a culture that marginalized people created and survived, and then for more profit reasons, like with a capital base, reasons, come in and profit off of, like, lift up, profit off of, and disregard. Gotcha. That scene and community, which kills it in a way. It just completely deflates it, and it goes away. It's unfortunate when people need that community. Yes.
Do you think that was an all around scene at that time, or do you think it was, state specific or region specific?
I think it didn't even exist in a lot of America back then. So once it was being sold more, entitled, it was being sold in a way that completely removed the history, the roots, the culture of it. And it was stripped down to a very diluted sort of, mass appeal sort of.
Yeah, it became very, very poppy. It became, well, as soon as the masses hear stuff, you might as well just throw it away, kind of.
Go ahead and start digging your underground bunker and go dive into the underground again.
Exactly. And I was listening to a podcast today, actually, and they made a good point that, people use this term underground all the time. This is underground, but That kind of depends on how rich your culture is. Because if your culture isn't rich, I mean, your underground started 3 years ago, you know? So it's not like it's not like it's like rich in culture.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. And it's, it's usually kind of like what the label is named after, the feral ones. It's the feral ones, those with not a lot of resources, youthful passion, unsupervised, where they can create, and they create together because they need to, you know? Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of these amazing sounds and arts, that kind of fall on the fringes and are sort of alternative, like punk or house or, whatever. I think a lot of that comes from that sort of feral one spirit, that feral spirit.
Yeah.
And that hunger and that passion definitely, I just don't feel like is there when it's, sort of mimicked by the privileged, mm-hmm. Who didn't get into that scene because they were looking for acceptance, I don't know. I think people come at it in different ways, and it shows.
Yeah, very true.
It shows.
Very true.
It's pretty obvious where people's passions lie, whether they want that to show or not. And it's one of those things like with the industry, I'm thankful for projection.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're like, thank goodness I can see it. Like, what if I didn't,
Yeah.
So, but hey, ignorance is bliss. Right?
Definitely. Very true. So you mentioned your label. Is that kind of the reason you just explained? Is that kind of the reason why you started the label?
Yeah. I noticed, I'm not a person of like a ton of means. Mm-hmm. I come from a pretty meager background. And I just noticed that, a lot of labels had a sound, a niche. Like when you describe the label, it's like, oh, they have that sound. Oh, it's that sound. Oh, it's that sound, Mm-hmm. And I would see labels sort of paint themselves into this corner. And then once that sort of faddish sound wanes some, then they're scrambling.
Yeah.
Because all that success has forced them in a sort of a more of a business techno sort of platform. Mm-hmm. And so what happens is they're sort of reacting to the underground as opposed to leading it. And I was seeing that more and more, and it just seemed like the right time. And then after talking with a bunch of other label bosses from labels that I admire, mm-hmm. they encouraged me, like they said, you should start a label. I think you should start a label, and after you hear that a few times from label bosses that run labels that you really appreciate and love, maybe you should consider running the label or starting a label.
Definitely.
So I was like, this is going to happen. So that's something I had this started early fall of last year. I've been working on launching this. So
okay.
It's been
so almost a year now.
Yeah, it's been in the works for a long time.
Nice.
Specific time, and I wanted to do it proper, and I wanted to make sure that out of the gate, there's no specific sound. And with the next release, you'll hear that.
Yeah.
Yeah, like the first release sounded kind of serious, but then there was some silly stuff in it. And then my album that came out shows a pretty broad spectrum of sound. And then Ima has a full album coming out next, early September.
Okay.
September 2nd, I believe. And that has everything from trap wave, pop, to house. It's like a feral one dream come true.
Yeah, for sure.
It's like the only genre that you can depend on with feral one is going to be dance music.
Dance
period.
Music. I like that.
Yeah.
I like
like
that.
You like jungle, you could probably find some here eventually.
I
like
that.
breaks, you could probably find that here eventually. You like disco, you could probably find that here eventually. So it's like I just want it to be open to dance, and I think that helps seed the underground. Because then people can play with genres like, oh, I don't want to do this hybrid genre because it's not going to fit in. It's not going to fit in. And fitting in with what's been done is not the underground's job. Our job is to do the new, the fresh, blend sounds, make new genres.
Very true.
Right now, I see a lot of the underground all focused on the top 40 artists. They're all looking at the mountaintop when they've caught all the juice around them.
Yeah.
And don't realize it. So that's why I'm going to take advantage of that and lift up a bunch of artists I think have got it going on and are doing new things.
I like that, because that's kind of the way that I see DJing should be. It shouldn't.
Yes.
It shouldn't be. You're just one type of DJ. I mean, I hope you should be able to play all type of house music, whatever the party demands or is called for. I hope you can hopefully play some type of, and then maybe if you don't like that genre, you should find something that sounds like that you like in a different genre, if that makes sense.
Right. Yeah, that makes a ton of sense, because I've done that before. It's like, I love this aspect of this genre.
Yeah.
It would sound so badass if I just pulled that and put this in this genre. And then pretty soon, just the slightest tweaks like that, you're like, this is a completely new hybrid genre or something like that, And I want to have a platform where people are willing to do that. I've talked to producers where I admire their early work.
Yeah.
And they have admitted to me that they're moving away from that, moving away from their own personal, passionate style to do a more sellable, like a more, what do you call it? Edible, or I don't know.
Palatable.
Palatable. Thank you. Palatable sound for the masses.
Yeah.
And that they're going to be focusing on that. And it just broke my heart hearing people say that to me, admitting it out loud, like, yeah, I just got to do what I got to do. And then hopefully I can get back to that. And I'm like, whoa, the idea that you have to have a lull in your discog of mediocrity in order to make a living to do music that you were making previously is heartbreaking.
Like you say, like if you go back and look at some of these, like the big producers out there, if you go back and look at their first couple releases, maybe their first pages of releases, it sounds completely different. And you can see where
because it's raw and they're hungry, and I'm like, I want to make something new, and it's like, but
that, is it business over passion or passion over business? Because at the end of the day, we all have to eat, And
absolutely.
So, I mean, it's one of those things where it's like, I don't know. At the end of the day, do what you want to do. Basically what you want to do.
Totally. And I'm just trying to fit sort of little voids that I'm seeing because I can.
Exactly.
Like, honestly, it's like, gosh, I wish this sound existed. And so it doesn't. So I'm going to make it.
Yeah.
I wish this label existed. That would be a dream, to work with a label that does this, and this. So I'm just going to do it.
Let's do it.
Yeah. So why not just do it?
Yeah.
So, I just, I feel like life's short,
Yep.
So you might as well, take a stab at it, and make it ideal if you can.
Very true. Very true.
Worth the try.
So you are actually our second label owner in a row.
Cool.
The last one was my homeboy, Pinto, out of New York. Last time we talked about the different hats a label owner has to wear, from actually signing the music, A&R in the music, running, the admin stuff of it, everything, promo, everything. So can you explain to some of the listeners that either want to, get in the game as an A&R or label owner, or just can you explain like kind of a daily for you as a label owner?
Yeah, really, like you just have to plan on, I'm unique in that I have a very large skill set. In a previous life, I used to be a graphic designer, illustrator, multimedia authoring.
That's perfect.
Digital art.
You
know what I mean? So, and then eventually, I got away from that, and now I'm a risk analyst by day.
Okay.
And like I have a day job.
Yeah.
And so to do the label though, I do most of the graphics and stuff. And sometimes I will outsource stuff, little things that I just don't have time for, but ultimately just plan on doing the majority of the work yourself. Unless you have somebody that you are together in it to win it, like you are practically married. Then by all means go for it. Two heads, oftentimes are better than one. But I just think I had a unique skill set where I could do it myself. But ultimately, it's distribution. There are a ton of people that could do distribution. There are many options out there. There are labels out there that will just do exclusively Bandcamp, which is awesome. I love that. I love that because they are just taking it all for themselves. Yeah, it's amazing. And then there are folks that just do the whole nines. They will do use Label Engine or what is it? Disco. I forget. There's another one out there.
I ain't talking about.
Yeah, there's like 3 or 4 big ones out there that the majority of people use. And a lot of times they will have bundled features in there, but you know, a lot of press and PR you can do yourself. Sending out promos, there's usually systems built in sometimes for that distribution, or you can use a third party like Invite.
Yeah.
There's a lot of different ways you can do promo. You can have somebody else do that is all systems pro, and maybe pay for that, and just, you know, plan on doing that for each release, or putting a little more into it when it's a full album, stuff like that. So you get from it what you put into it, honestly, but plan on wearing all the hats. And if you cannot wear all the hats, make sure you have those reliable channels set up.
Very true.
And so, because ultimately, like, you have a vision, trust that vision. If you don't have a vision for the label, don't start a label. Don't do it.
Yeah.
What are you doing?
Yeah.
Like, yeah. So, it's mostly a labor of love, you know. Chances are you will lose money. It's like a boat. It's a ton of fun, but yeah. You know, best case scenario, you make some music history.
Very true. Very true. So when you receive music from different people, say if you like it and say if you don't like it. We like to give people that are new in the game kind of, you know, some game. Can you maybe give some good things and some bad things about sending a email with a track attached to it? Yeah.
You know, just don't wax on, you know, forever.
Yeah.
You know, I don't need to hear we don't need to hear the details of, like, you know, details of the trauma that went into this song. That, I mean, give us the gist of it, because
yeah,
mostly what we want to do is be listening to the track and not distract, you know, but just kind of give us a general idea of what's going on with the song. Like, where are you coming from? What are you going for? And just anything, you know, the pertinent information.
Okay.
And then just a streaming link is good. Nobody wants to download stuff and, you know, bog up their laptops or whatever, you know. We all have to deal with incredibly large files. So the less digital stuff you can shove off on people, the better. So
do you like your stuff mixed and mastered?
I have no preference.
I'm sorry.
I have no preference. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
I ask these questions just because different labels like different things. Some people like them mixed loud enough so they can kind of play out sometimes. Some people like it with ozone on it. Some people like it kind of mixed and mastered. Some people want it blah, blah, blah. You know what I mean? So because most companies or most labels, they have their own mastering person. So
yeah, I have my preferred master.
Okay.
If I have my choice, if I have control over it, all of my stuff goes through Hume Audio here in Seattle.
Okay.
HUME.
Shout out.
The vast majority of everything that topped the charts all were mastered, got that polish from Hume Audio.
Nice.
So I work closely with them, and will be for all Feral One stuff. But honestly, I don't have a preference.
Okay.
I just need to know.
Yeah.
Just tell me, like, is this, you know, what am I, just like, is it a pre-master or is it a master or a self-master? Just tell me. And I will listen to it with those goggles.
Gotcha.
Anybody who's doing A&R should be able to listen to a track, pre-mastered, mastered, whatever, and get the gist of it. You can imagine in your head what it will sound like when it pops. Yeah. That much more, you know.
Very true.
Yeah. So I don't have a preference, but I do want an unmastered at some point.
Okay.
You know?
Cool.